Progress Wrestling, Chapter 36 from the O2 Academy, Brixton. The biggest show that Progress has ever done. At the time, the biggest independent show in all of Europe, I think. I'm not going to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. If it's not, well, go fuck yourself. My guest on this episode was actually here for this show. He may have been too drunk to remember it, but he was there. So that's something. All of this and more on the Apron Bump podcast.
And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump podcast. I am your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle Bird. How's everybody doing today? How's your week going? How's your day going? How's your evening going? I don't know when you're listening to this. It could be years after the fact. Oh, but yeah. Daddy's pretty hungover right now. Had a little pay-per-view last night, little AEW Dynasty. Had a little too many whiskey Dr. Peppers. Yeah. How's that make you feel? Whiskey and Diet Dr. Pepper. Uh-huh. Let me enjoy my life, all right? Take your fucking full... Shut up, whore! That's, Grandma texting me. Anyways, what were we saying? Oh, yeah. Fuck Coke. Full sugar Coke can suck my asshole, by the way. It's not a good beverage. It's not a good beverage. Sorry, am I coming out too hot with the soda pop discussion? Maybe a little too much of a hot take, but you know it's not hot, or you know it is hot. This show we're about to cover is hot. Progress Wrestling, Chapter 36 from the O2 Academy. We've been building to this show for quite a while now. In real time, they had been building to this show for about a year. Definitely at least the entirety of 2016. And we're here in about September of 2016. So a lot of matches on this show have been building for a while. A lot of stories culminating on this show. It's kind of their WrestleMania in a way. At the time, Progress didn't think, judging by how this card was booked and judging by my guest who has a much wider knowledge of the future of Progress past this point. It doesn't seem like they thought they would ever have a bigger show than this. Turns out they would. But you can kind of see from this show, there's a lot of multi-person matches. It's like everybody's trying to get on the card. So it's kind of wacky. This show's kind of wacky. There's some really good matches. We got Zack Sabre Jr. versus Tommaso Ciampa in a 2 out of 3 falls match, which is Ciampa's last independent wrestling match. We got the finals of the Atlas Championship. So we're crowning the first ever Atlas champion on this show. For those unaware, that is a title for those 205 and over. So it's the quote unquote big lads championship belt. We also got a triple threat match in the main event. Marty Scurll versus Mark Haskins versus Tommy End. You may know him as Malachi Black, but lots going on. We got some major returns on this show. Progress is cooking, man. Progress is cooking. We got British Strong Style going after the tag team titles. We got, the women are here. The Origins here. Like, everything you could ask for from Progress is here. But hey, you may be just jumping on the train. This train's cooking, but maybe you just fucking jumped and grabbed onto the caboose and are along for the ride. And I'm here to tell you, you don't need to do that. You can get on the train station, buy a ticket, and I'm losing the metaphor now. But what I'm trying to say is you could start this journey from the beginning. You can go to apronbump.com. You can go to the episodes tab, and you can select Progress Wrestling or check the link in the description. And that'll bring you to all of the Progress Wrestling chapters that I've covered in chronological order. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through here. Chapter 36. So there's a lot of content, a lot of good stuff from Progress Wrestling. Love covering this promotion. It's a hot time for British wrestling. So hop on now, binge away if you're behind. It's a fun journey. A lot of ridiculousness, lots of fun cameos, lots of great wrestling to talk about from across the pond. So do that. Follow me at Apron Bump. Check out the YouTube. Been putting up a lot of YouTube exclusive videos, a lot of short fun videos doing over there. So do that if you're not already. Check out the video version of these podcasts. If you're not aware, give it a like, give it a subscribe. Also on audio platforms, if you're not aware of that, check out my OnlyFans, check out my Feet Finder accounts. That's one thing I'll never do. I mean, I would if there's a price, but like my feet are not. I mean, I guess they're okay, right? I have weird toes. I have like double jointed toes, so they look like wonky. I think it's a Filipino thing. So I guess if you're into that, send me a DM and maybe we'll get that cooking. How would I get here? Hey, I have a guest on this episode, Ross from the Wrestling Should Be Fun podcast, returning to the show. Always a good old time with Ross. He's my go-to for anything Progress Wrestling. Go check him out at WSB Fun on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. They're on Instagram. They're everywhere. Check out the description for everything Wrestling Should Be Fun. They're a great follow on social media. Great podcast as well. They get into current stuff. They get into the British independent scene. They get into a lot of stuff. They do fun segments, a little retro action in there, maybe a little, just a lot of malarkey over there at Wrestling Should Be Fun. And as per the name, they have fun with it, which is it's a hard thing to find nowadays. People having fun watching wrestling. So check them out. They're a bunch of good boys. I've had Dom. I've had James. There are a couple good blokes over there. So go check them out. And with that, I think we might as well dive right into it, eh? Progress Wrestling, Chapter 36, with myself and Ross from the Wrestling Should Be Fun podcast.
Just missed all this storm that happened over there. I don't know if you've seen any footage of it.
No. What is it? Just rain and wind?
Well, yeah, just that sort of storm, and that's why every wrestler in wrestling is called Storm. Apparently,
who's your favorite storm in wrestling? Starting it out hot here.
Let's go with.
And it could be any kind of storm, by the way. It could be like a hurricane or whatever. You know?
Of course, yeah. I'm going to go with a boring answer, and I'm an ECW guy. Let's go with Lance Storm.
Okay. No, I like it. I mean, James Storm, you gotta throw in there. Johnny Storm, that's a person, right?
Johnny
Storm, British wrestler?
Johnny Storm is a British wrestler. I'm a bit sad that I didn't pick him. It would have been on brand.
See, I teed you up to try to just set us up here just to get our tea and crumpets ready. Right? And you just Lance Storm. Canadian. You went with a Canadian? I think
Johnny Storm was part of Team UK in the TNA World Cup.
That makes, I mean, anybody could have been. TNA, I mean, it could have been the Barbarian as a part of that team, for all we know. Sounds like a segment that you guys would do on your show, by the way. I'm not sure, have you? But like best storms in wrestling, do like a bracket. And if it's not yet, feel free to use it.
We definitely did a Wrestling World Cup dream bookings scenario. I'm pretty sure that we got England to win, obviously.
Might be a bit biased, but I don't know. We'll have to look into that. We'll have to have the board look at it.
I'm pretty sure that Johnny Storm beat The Rock in the final.
I mean, man, have they ever faced each other, anywhere else? We'll never know. I guess. But no storms here, I don't think. I'm actually not sure. There might be a storm or two in here. Little chapter 36, a little Brixton.
Yeah.
Were you here, by the way?
I was here for it. Yep. I can't tell you how excited I was for this show at the time. I know that when you previously spoke about Brixton O2 on these shows, I get the impression that maybe you thought it was going to be at the O2 where like the NXT show was. But no.
Maybe at some point. Yeah, no.
It's Brixton, so it was. I think it holds like almost 3,000. I think they said that they sold 2,400
something
when I
like
was
that.
watching the watch back. And yeah, for Progress at the time, it was such a big deal. And I remember traveling down on the day, listening to one of the few podcasts that spoke about Progress at the time, just absolutely buzzing, going to a pub garden on a beautiful summer's day, watching the show, getting ready, getting the drinks in with the lads, and just being so excited. And I think you'll agree that I think they did well.
Yeah. I was about to ask, do you think it lived up to the hype? Because they've been building to this show for pretty much the most of 2016. You know, like
Yeah.
Zack Sabre Jr., Ciampa. I mean, that had like a 16-month build.
Yeah.
It had a lot of expectations. I mean, it was packed in there. The atmosphere was amazing. I'm sure you being there live. I mean, I have no concept of how it was, but do you think it lived up to the hype? All that said,
I think it did. Yeah. I looking back, there's definitely an element of we're not sure if we're ever going to do a show as big as this again. So let's fit everyone that we possibly can on this show. There was a lot of like multi-mans and multi-women's matches on there, and I'm like the purists would probably have wanted a bit more one-on-one action. There wasn't too many of that actually on the show, aside from the Atlas title and Zack Sabre Jr. match. I think it was the only two. But I think that's just proof of like, yeah, started from the bottom. Now we're here, and we're going to try and give everyone their moment during this time, even to the point where like the commentators were getting their entrance. Like so many people got like their flowers on this show, and it was a lovely moment watching it back, because whilst it was kind of back patty and like, God, aren't we good for pulling this off? Like I think it warranted it. So and the crowd were just so supportive of everything throughout. It was just a blast to watch back, and people being like, yeah, we did it, and let's enjoy it whilst we're here rather than sit on our hands. And yeah, I thought everyone was over, particularly the heels on this show. You can tell that the heels were built up really, really well throughout the show. I think the baby faces are mostly over because of how hated the heels are in pretty much every match. It was almost like an easy win for all the faces because the heels are hated so much in all these matches.
Right.
But yeah, loved it. Loved watching it back, and looking forward to chatting through it with you.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I noted the same thing, that at least towards the end of the show, it felt very heavy on the multi-person matches, to the point where the main event, I was almost like, feels like a lot of spots that were happening, we'd kind of already seen a flavor of it. But to your point, they didn't know if they'd ever have a show this big. So that is a good point. So let's just get everybody on the card for a showcase. And but it ended up being a good show for sure, and a really cool finish to the show for sure, and some standout matches. But
what did you make of the kind of like the look and feel of the place, in terms of it being obviously away from the garage and the ballroom?
I thought it was interesting that the heavy majority of the people were all on one side. Of the I mean, I guess that's the only way to set it up, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because of the upper tier, like it would have been impossible to see it if the ring was any further in.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I always loved the balcony look. It did, like, obviously, I mean, at least to me, I think it'd look better if it was all the way around, but with restrictions that they had.
When you had the main shot, it kind of looked like an almost smaller venue than the ballroom, didn't it?
Yes, especially like the entrance way, because like the ballroom stage area always looks so cool and grand. This one almost looked cheaper, like because it was just like a frame, no stage or anything. But then you like turn the camera 180 degrees and it's just fucking sea of people. And then like everyone around the ring, like on the three sides, like you said, it did feel small, but I think the audio at least made it not feel small. But visually, it was kind of cool, but there were parts that I wish were better. But like they not really much they could do about it, I guess.
Yeah, the shots that they did manage to get from the back of the wrestlers with the like the scope of the people that were there looked really cool, and I think that was used as their like Facebook background for like 3 years after this. The image of Smallman with his arms in the air with like just 2,000 people screaming at him.
I mean, it was a hell of a visual, and because Smallman, doing his normal intro thing, and he's clearly emotional because he goes through it. Their first show, apparently, they sold 326 tickets,
which for a first show is still incredible. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
promotions that would kill for that. now.
Especially 2012 British wrestling, like it wasn't exactly on fire like it is here
Yeah.
in 2016, going into 2017. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they marketed it a lot on social with Colt's face on it because he was on that show. I think Colt was their
Right.
like big draw at the time.
So yeah, the growth is there just in the numbers alone, and cool moment. Only 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's definitely something to be proud of for sure. I mean, what did you said you felt like this was a really big moment for progress. I mean, what did you feel like? Did you see them potentially going to bigger stadiums at this point? Did you think this was like the first of many, or did you maybe think this is like the biggest they'd ever get?
So yeah, obviously they went to Wembley after this, and they went to Alexandra Palace, which I think are both. Well, Wembley definitely is bigger. Alexandra Palace, I'm not sure if it's bigger than Brixton, but equally, if not a little bit more big. So they did pull it off, but at the time, I think most people were thinking this was going to be a bit of a one-off, and it was going to be like this is a like celebration for what we've done, and it'll probably never get as big as this. But for like 2 or 3 more years, the bubble didn't burst.
Yeah, and I mean that they're working a lot with WWE at this point, so they definitely got a lot of stuff behind them.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. You mentioned that because there's a point. There's about 20 points on this show where they say our friends at the WWE,
Right.
and I don't even know if it was officially announced at this point that they were working together, but clearly behind closed doors there was discussions going on at this point, probably. So that's quite interesting. But then you've also got the element of Tommaso Ciampa quite smartly trying to be a heel in his match using the pedigree and getting heat for it. And that's kind of apropos to what kind of happened to the huge crowds that they were getting when WWE came on board. Maybe a quarter, maybe half of the crowd turned their back on Progress because it was built as punk rock pro wrestling and, you know, independent and sweary. And WWE came along, and unfortunately, some rules had to be put in place. Like, we're going to be on the network now, so please don't swear at shows, etc., etc. And people were like, "Well, fuck you, I'm not going."
Right. I mean, I do get that. That was kind of how I was with Ring of Honor. It wasn't the exact same thing, but it's like when Ring of Honor at some point, like they got a TV deal and it was very glossy. That's kind of, for me, the appeal is like, oh, it's this underground thing that like only I know about, or only like a select few people know about. And when you kind of build to a certain point, I kind of get it. But as long as the content's there.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because when you're in the thick of it and you really do wear your heart on your sleeve, like you probably did for Ring of Honor, and I was doing for Progress, part of you is that like, where were you when the first album came out, and you know,
right,
and they weren't selling out arenas. You don't know the like early records, all this sort of bullshit that people kind of go through.
You didn't have to sit through Styx matches and Lion Kid and whoever the hell.
Yeah. But yeah, like each to their own. I've stuck with them throughout. But I understand why people don't, especially because of the branding that they went with at the very start. It is kind of, okay. You use that terminology to sell t-shirts more than stand by it, you know?
Right. Yeah, for sure. But well, speaking of WWE, so we're fresh off of the Cruiserweight Classic at this point, which Jack Gallagher and Zack Sabre Jr. were a part of, representing Progress here. But also and
also Ciampa.
And Ciampa as well, yeah. Yeah, we're in like DIY era Ciampa too, so it's like crazy to see him just casually in a Progress ring. But the Cruiserweight Championship, apparently the guy that designed it also designed the Atlas Championship, which is being debuted here, the finals of the Atlas Championship. So we got Joe Coffey versus Rampage Brown. What did you make, from what you remember, what did you make of this round robin tournament that they did? It was 8 guys, 2 blocks.
So this was the period of time where Progress weren't great at getting their footage from the Manchester shows up on their VOD very quickly.
Mm.
So, and it meant that it was quite hard to follow, even as a fan, if you didn't go to the Manchester shows. And then they started booking some slightly weird stuff in that tournament as well, where like, T-Bone didn't show up, so wrestling for him is someone else. It's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah. No, yeah, because that was my like even at the pace that I'm watching these shows, like it was hard to like remember like what the standings were, and like you said, like there was one point where I think Mastiff was injured, so it was like, oh, we'll just bring his origin mate Zach Gibson to take a spot, and then there were like draws that happened and no contests, so yeah, it was very hard to follow. But
and they rarely put like the group tables up for like I know like sometimes wrestling fans are like, oh, but you should just be able to like follow it by yourself on the Wikipedia page, whatever, for like G1, for example. But like, I feel like sports teams don't ever show a match and then don't show the table afterwards. Like, it's perfectly fine to tell fans what is going on, right?
At least like a brief little graphic at the bottom quarter for a couple seconds, but like as the match starts or something. But and also it's like 8 guys round robin, but it built to a semifinals. Okay, so we got half the guys going to the single elimination port. So it's like, why not just do a single elimination during the? I don't know, but
I think it was I think in principle it was a good idea because it was obviously new and it was like, big guys wrestling, so that's cool. Like, let's get people used to big guys wrestling by having lots of matches on the shows. But it also was quite convoluted, and as I said, like not everyone who was in the tournament even fought in the tournament.
Right, exactly. And while we're talking about the logistics of this title, I don't know if they've changed this since, but 205 for the Atlas seems a bit small, no? For big lads wrestling?
It does, but have you seen the roster of British wrestlers?
I mean, like 2016, we got big boys, you know? I mean, all of the guys in this tournament had to be at least 220.
Touch and go.
Who was the smallest guy? Because Mastiff, Easton Reese,
T-Bone might be the smallest guy, but he's still a bit like, yeah.
He's at least 220 for sure. I think bump it up that was the cruiserweight title in WWE. 205 is like, I mean, I'm well in the Atlas bracket, but I don't know.
Talking about the guy who made the belt that went from Progress to WWE, made the cruiserweight title. Do you reckon that they heard about him via the staff and the tag team title and the tag team title shields?
Were you anticipating like a barbell to represent the championship? No, but we have a belt here. Classic championship belt. Look pretty good looking belt. If I do say so myself.
The Progress titles, once they got rid of the madness, the Progress titles are pretty beautiful.
Once they quit fucking around, they got some good looking hardware to fight for. But yeah, so we got Rampage versus Joe Coffey, who did meet earlier in the tournament, and probably one of, if not the best match of the tournament. Ended up in a draw, so pretty good kind of long-term storytelling here. And now it's these two. Now it's no time limits, none of that tomfoolery. One guy's gonna win, one guy's gonna be the inaugural champion.
Yeah.
This match was pretty good. I don't think it was as good as their previous match in Progress, nor do I think it was even as good as their NXT UK matches that they had. But it was a solid way to start the show. You know, you have your the bull stampede spot where they're on the outside and they run from one side of the ring to the other and smack each other's meat.
Yeah.
All the stuff, the chops, the slams, all that stuff. I thought this was a solid match, not match of the night kind of stuff, but it was a fine way to start the show.
Yeah, a lovely way to start the show, I think. It's a new title, a singles match. Both people were over. I thought Joe Coffey in particular here did a great job for himself of being the guy that no one wanted to win at the start. Mm-hmm. And then because of his efforts in the ring, people were kind of like, yeah, okay, I don't mind if he wins. Let's kind of cheer both guys.
Right.
But what I found watching this was quite interesting was, firstly, Joe Coffey's like wrestling picture in the right hand side. where they show the match promo, he's got that like face paint on. Then he came out with the Iron Mask because he's the Iron Man, and it's very clear to me that at this point he's like searching for his thing. And obviously,
so
he's found
Coffee
that now.
He's never had face paint in progress. I don't think he's been doing the Iron Man shtick for a while at this point.
Yeah, I think that's from his ICW stuff.
Yeah.
In Scotland. But yeah, he's obviously found his way now by being a football hooligan, and that seems to be his thing because it just seems to be just who he is, which is what wrestling should be, right? Just take yourself and turn yourself up 10% or whatever it is.
You don't think he's an Iron Man?
I'm not sure he's an Iron Man. I've never seen a 60-minute Joe Coffey match, but do I want to? That is the question.
Yeah, as I say, I think I'm all right. I think I'm set.
But yeah, it's quite interesting because I actually end up for the Twitter that we do. I do a lot of those like on this days, and we ended up watching a Raw is War from like 2012 or something, and I saw Cesaro, and he was in his like rip the trousers off stage of Antonio Cesaro, and it got me thinking of like he's tried so much stuff. Is like this could be my thing. I could wear sunglasses. I could wear headphones. I could wear a hoodie. Like he's just tried so many things.
Rugby player.
Yeah, it just felt like seeing Joe Coffey here. I was like, yeah, you're still searching.
Yeah, it's like I feel like he's always been the same guy in the ring, though. At least from what I've seen. I've never seen like his ICW stuff, but yeah, I'm glad you said that because I made a note that between these two guys, Joe Coffey definitely stood out to me. I mean, Rampage is kind of just like the foundation of Progress at this point. Like he's been there since like chapter 5, I think it was.
Yeah.
So he was the definitely the sentimental favorite here, and it was like a guy that when these brackets were released, I was like, oh, Rampage is at least making the finals. But no, it was some good stuff here. Coffey's throwing out that crazy pop-up crossbody he does. It's like the best moonsault ever, but it's a crossbody. Little giant swing action from Coffey. Couple good near falls here towards the end. He misses his discus lariat, but then hits one to the back of the head, then hits the regular lariat for a 2 count. Rampage with an avalanche Samoan drop and a pile driver for a 2 count, which is I don't think anybody's ever kicked out of his pile driver in Progress, at least.
Yeah.
But another pile driver from Rampage, pulling him off the top rope. Hits, and we have a new champion, new Atlas champion, Rampage Brown. I mean, this as solid a first champ as you can get to represent this title. When you think of big meaty guys in Progress, Rampage is the first guy I think of. So, but like the who sings this theme song? Hatebreed.
Oh, sorry,
Ozzy Osbourne.
That was that's Joe Coffey's song, isn't it? Iron Man.
Right. Yes. But I'll just say 2 entrances that get the crowd hyped up, the crowd participation, like the energy of all this was great. So I was happy with this, I think.
Yeah, me too. I felt like this happens quite a lot with matches that I watch where they both kick out of their finishers and then like a minute later, a second finisher is hit and then they win with it. Sometimes I feel like I kind of get what you're doing because you're kind of protecting the other person's finisher by both kicking out of your finishers. But sometimes the first one looks so much better than the second one. And that was the case here. The first pile driver looked sick. And then the second one kind of felt a bit flat. And the finish was a little bit flat. Whereas if they'd have got the 3 count on that first pile driver, maybe it would have taken the match from like, I don't know, a Meltzer thing of like 3 to a 3.5.
Yeah. This was only 3.5 stakes, I think. But I think on paper they drew up that finish to look cooler than it did because Coffey was on the top rope, he got crotched, and then Rampage pulled him off upside down and hit a pile driver. But that almost like made it look less impactful because you don't have like lifting up and then driving him down. It was just like pulling him off, and it was the whole thing. But we're nitpicking. Yeah,
I'm all for safety of wrestlers, so I'm not saying that this should have happened because it's fucking risky, but if it would have been like a second rope power driver, it would have looked obviously like.
I mean, Rhino did it all the time. Why can't Rampage?
It's
And
interesting though that you also mention the music, because throughout this show, obviously, it's all copyrighted music. Every wrestler has someone from, like you say, Hatebreed all the way through to like Talking Heads, and everyone seems to sing along to these tracks that everyone knows, and it helps the atmosphere massively. But in that venue, it's like a really well known, well loved music venue in London, and it just felt at the time like way bigger than being in the ballroom.
Really?
Yeah, like there was countless times watching back even that I got like goosebumps listening to one of the entrance musics, and like both the Ciampa and Zack Sabre ones, like that felt like a really big like crowd chant along to both wrestlers' tracks, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was all throughout the show. But on the topic of acoustics, so I didn't notice this in the first match, but it was very prevalent in the second match. It didn't seem like the ring was mic'd. Like watching it back, like you couldn't hear any of the impact happening on the mat or any of the chops or anything. Did that come off there live, or were you able to hear everything as normal?
So we like to stand at the wrestling, which is detrimental a little bit when they do the bigger venues because we're right at the back. So actually, my memory of this show is not really like live, at least, like not really being able to see a lot, but just having like a lovely time.
Right. You were a couple cases in at this point.
Yeah. So I must admit, I didn't notice it at the time, but because of the fact I was further away than I would have been at the ballroom, I did feel a disconnect live. But I was enjoying like the experience of, oh wow, progress are in this space.
Yeah. I mean, you're just getting pissed with your mates, huh?
Exactly.
What other British things? I don't know. I'm out. That's all I got. Well, we got a 6-woman tag up next. We got Alex Windsor, Dahlia Black, and Ginny versus Laura DiMatteo, Nixon Newell, and Polly Anna. So we are building, I suppose, to the Natural Progression Series, which is going to crown the first ever women's champion in Progress. And I guess this is kind of a way to set that up, showcasing all of the top contenders, I guess. Anyone stand out to you in particular among these 6?
So I thought everyone did a great job here. I actually really enjoyed this match. I enjoyed it way more than I had in my mind that I did live. But again, as I said, couldn't really see much. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this match. But for me, Ginny is the star. Ginny is incredible. As soon as she steps out there, she owns it. She knows exactly what she's doing. Every little thing that she does is for a reason. I loved the close-up shots. Shout out to the cameramen during this. Actually, the close-up shots in particular look beautiful in this. With the background. When Laura DiMatteo came out, it was only a small little bit, but like she was so in character, and her reaction to Laura DiMatteo being there, even in the same room as her, was amazing. Her wrestling is great. She's a mixture of comedy heel when she like sells. Some of the stuff that like she does when she sells is funny and then like she's also like really vicious when she's on the offense, which is pretty cool. It's quite a cool like dichotomy of a wrestler. I just think she's amazing, and I think it's a real shame that she's not doing it anymore. I think she's capable of being on a stage along with her husband in the WWE or NXT, personally. And I don't think that they need to particularly change her character either. I think it's just a good character, someone who thinks she's better than you, spends more money on her clothes than you, looks down on you, easy to hate, but also very good at what she does, which makes her even easier to hate as well. So I absolutely loved her. Absolutely love, of course, TK and Dahlia. The breaking the fourth wall whilst they're kissing, so annoying. The
staring at the camera as he's got his tongue down his throat. That was horrifying. I did not care for that personally.
The Titanic pose that they did in the corner. Just so much fun. Seeing Alex Windsor at this point is really interesting because she's obviously recently started dating Will Ospreay. And she's been around for absolute ages. I think she was actually married to a wrestler who sadly died not too long ago called Ryan Smile.
Oh yeah.
And she was always a good wrestler, but in the last 2 years or so, she's really like on the up. I think she's been booked on the latest NJPW show in America.
Oh wow.
So yeah, like pretty cool seeing her, and then obviously everyone else pretty much has gone on to big things. Laura Di Matteo probably is the one that hasn't, and obviously Pollyanna through other reasons. But all 6 of these so talented. Loved it. They really laid it in as well. There was some big hits going in. I know that you're saying that the ring maybe wasn't giving out that impression, but they were laying it in.
There were some brutal double teams here. There was a lot of like tandem DDT type moves. A lot of people landing on their necks, and
the last like 3 minutes where nobody kind of knew who the legal people were in the ring. That was great fun. Really enjoyed it. It kind of felt a bit like a old school Ring of Honor match.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I pretty much agree. Jenny, by far, I mean, was the standout for me in terms of character, at least. Just the heat that she has, and it's just like you said, it's the little things. It's, you know, her connection with Laura Di Matteo and how she used to be like her servant. So when Laura comes out, she's staring a hole through her, and then people are posing on the corners, and she's like trying to get at them, or she's just like looking at them like with disdain. So I'm a huge fan of Jenny here. Her and Laura go at it at some point. Still a lot of fire in that rivalry. Alex Windsor is a name that I've always heard of, but I haven't seen much of. But she really impressed me in this match. Just the way she moves, like she's very athletic. Like from just a pure athletic in-ring talent point of view, I thought she probably stood out to me most in this match. But everyone had their chance to shine. Like you said, when it gets towards the end, everybody's hitting their finisher. Shout out, by the way, to Jenny using the style clash. That is very clever. Very clever.
I'm not sure that AJ Styles will thank Laura for kicking out of it, but
well, she'll get hers, I'm sure. I think AJ's, I guess he's in WWE at this point, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll have a match one day. But yeah, TK gets in there at some point because he punched Pollyanna. It was months ago, I guess, at this point. So he was trying to do it again, but she ducks and he punches his girlfriend, Dahlia. And a bunch of stuff happens, finisher trading all over the place. And we get a brutal, what does Jenny call it? The facelift or something?
Yeah, I think it's called the facelift. Yeah.
It's like basically an X Factor, but draping. So Laura's ankles were on the second rope, and Jenny drives the top of her head into the mat. Looks brutal.
Yeah. She took that on her elbows as well. I was like, oh man, that's got dislocated elbow written all over it.
Oof, there's no good way to land. But yeah, so Jenny gets the win here. Ultimately, you know, just a showcase of the women. Jenny, who it's got to be the favorite to be that first champion, comes out on top. And I would agree. I didn't have much expectations going into this because, you know, all the women's matches so far in progress, they've been good. None have been really like stand out to me, but this one was really a really fun match, I thought.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And the lasting image of that guy giving Ginny the finger, and usually the wrestlers just kind of like give the finger back or shout at them a little bit. Ginny just high-faced him in the face. It was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of middle fingers on this show.
Yeah.
It's and I know it's you guys do things different over there, but it's very jarring to see a whole 2,000 people calling a lady a cunt.
There is that. Yeah.
Maybe,
well, you know, some could argue that Ginny's got every right to push some guy in the face who calls her a cunt. You know,
I think that's a fair trade. I think it is. But
what a difference though! Like even like 2016, like that was kind of like part of the fun of going to a Progress show, and like now that would just be so frowned upon, a wrestler putting their hands on a fan or vice versa. Like whereas back then it was kind of like, yeah, that happens.
So you're telling me the WWE or the Peacock versions of Progress don't have cunt chants or whatever?
Yeah, maybe they change it into count.
Yeah. Well, don't count on watching this match because so I looked at the card and it said dark no disqualification match. Pastor William Ever versus Sebastian. And my thought was like, why is this dark? They've been building to this match. It's a no DQ match. Why wouldn't they show this? Well, apparently, and you could probably provide insight, I guess Sebastian got injured in this match pretty much right away.
Yeah, so literally the bell rings. Everyone's excited. They've listened to Personal Jesus, sang along to that, had a great time. Bell rings. Pastor absolutely sprints at Sebastian, gives him his clothesline from heaven. And yeah, Sebastian just couldn't get up. I think he got like what they call a stinger. Is that right? Like when he kind of like partially paralyzed. That's what was told to us as fans after the show. And I was massively surprised that it was not left on the VOD, because I thought, well, that's going to help sell an angle at some point, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big thing that happens. Like, so say if this Rhea Ripley injury is a genuine one, like in some ways, whilst it's awful, it helps the storyline, right? Like when stuff like this happens as a wrestling promotion, it's a bit of a goldmine sometimes, as like sad as it is. So I was kind of surprised that it was left off, and there was part of me that was like, this has got to be a work. And then especially when the Chuck Mambo match happened, that was supposedly impromptu. And the reason that I was like, how is this impromptu when they've got like beach balls blown up for everyone to throw around? Like, yeah. So this is a term of argument in our Wrestling Should Be Fun group for absolutely ages, that everyone else thinks it isn't work. And I'm the one guy that's like, it's a work, boys. I'm standing by it. I'm standing by it. But yeah, so either it was a genuine thing and it happened, or it was a work. But if it was a work, why didn't they put it on VOD?
Yeah, I was about to say. I think they would have kept it if it was a work, and I think it wouldn't be. I think it would have been the other way around had they wanted to make an angle out of it, probably. Yeah. But to your point, a hell of a way to put over his finish. I mean, it lip paralyzes a guy. I mean, anyone's got to look out for that move now. So I'm sure. I mean, I don't know if they ever show the footage like in recaps, or if they at least allude to it. I know these guys have a match eventually, right? Kind of down the line.
By this point, I know that the build up on the last video that you've put up of Progress, I think you've just seen the one where Sebastian comes out and says, like, I know what you did. Has that been said at this point? I'm not entirely sure, because I've missed a few chapters on your catch-ups.
So he hasn't said, I don't think he said what he did. If he did, it wasn't very memorable. I mean, it's just all been very weird. Pastor was world champion for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Sebastian's back, like, because he was a part of like a comedy tag team. Now all of a sudden he's by himself and he's a serious guy. I don't know. What did you just make of this whole feud that they got going on here?
I didn't particularly care for it, but it gets quite interesting and good after this. I won't spoil it.
Yeah, because at this point, Sebastian's threatening Pastor. He's holding this over his head. I know what you did. And then it was either the last chapter or 2 chapters before this. They had the deal where like he wanted Pastor to hit him with a chair, but then he wouldn't hit him. And then Sebastian beat him up with a chair. Yeah. It all feels like out of left field. But to your point, if it gets better, maybe they're just planting seeds for something.
I think it's the first time that they've what Progress did really, really well was tell simple stories. And this one felt like a bit more high concept, because they're talking about like religion and forgiveness and etc. Right. Whereas the programs that they did really well, it was someone that was an absolute bastard and someone that was like, I don't want you to be a bastard anymore, and that was kind of like simple as that, and it's just easy telling, and they did it really, really well. Whereas this was the first time that they tried to do something a bit more maybe highbrow almost, and I don't know if it necessarily landed, because it kind of became, rather than being highbrow, it kind of became kind of a bit of a farce.
Yeah, it's also interesting, like just the nature of independent wrestling. It's not like it's a weekly episodic thing, so it's like a month or 2 month in between like continuing the story, so that might even
Yeah.
make it feel disjointed. You might even forget what happened,
Completely.
you know,
Yeah.
leading up to this. So like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, and it, because I know Pastor's a Pro Joe guy. Is Sebastian as
Yeah.
well?
I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah.
So they're both like pretty green still, trying to do
So,
this like high concept stuff.
So that obviously leads into the storyline that comes out of this, where like that's how he knows, because they've like been in the same
Right.
places.
That's right. He did mention that he was, because they both were in the same class, I guess. And then Pastor went on to great heights, won the Progress title, and Sebastian kind of faded off. So I guess that's what ignited this, his kind of, you know, but more on that, I guess, as we move along here. But we got some shields to defend, or I guess it's just one shield, two halves of a shield to defend. We got the Progress Tag Team titles on the line. The London Riots defending against British Strong Style. All right, so rank them best to worst. Mustache Mountain, New Catch Republic, and I guess whatever this iteration is of Pete Dunne and Trent Seven.
So this is purely subjective.
Sure, yeah.
British Strong Style number 1.
Yeah.
Mustache Mountain number 2. Catch Republic 3. Just because, as like proud of them as I am, like nothing beats like seeing those guys grow in front of your very own eyes, right? And then like that whole thing of like, if you love something, you have to let it go.
Yeah.
And I will always love them, but I won't love them as much as I did back in 2016.
Right. Yeah, Tyler's all old now. He's got the long hair and the chest hair.
Loves yoga.
Loves it. He loves to tell us over and over again. Oh, how butch of him. But anyways, we got London Riots here defending the titles. British Strong Style, Pete Dunne, Trent Seven. Pretty newly formed here. Newly formed heel team. If you couldn't tell that they were heel, you could probably tell by the middle fingers on their shirts and them just coming out with the middle fingers and not putting them down until the match started, pretty much.
Yeah.
Great merch there. Great merch. But
I quite liked how you could kind of tell that was the one time that you could kind of tell the experience of Trent compared to Pete, where Trent held that back pose for like 30 seconds and obviously had no idea what Pete was doing. Pete held it for like 5 seconds and just was so like pent up and ready to get out the crowd. He was like out the ring. Like Trent's got no idea. He just thinks that his partner's next to him.
Yeah. They're still building the team cohesion, I guess. Still a work in progress. They're working in progress. But it ends up being kind of like a tornado tag match. Not a lot of rules. You're not a lot of rules being enforced.
So the big storyline here, of course, is the eye, isn't it, of Rob Lynch, which looks absolutely fucked.
Apparently got kicked in the face the night before, I guess.
If anyone's seen that picture of Vader in Japan where his eye kind of comes out, it looks a bit like that. It's pretty grim.
Yeah, and I didn't notice until Trent Seven said it looked like a pussy slit. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, kind of does.
Yeah, that was a line.
It was a thing that was said. You're not wrong. Everyone grabs a chair. They sit on the outside. They start hitting each other, which is very polite, I guess. Double Samoan. James Davis hits this double Samoan drop that like
so cool, wasn't it?
You see this every once in a while. Somebody tries to put two guys on their shoulders, and a lot of times it looks kind of clunky. But this is the one time where it's like, oh, he just fucking muscled these guys up. It looked really good.
The other guy who does it, of course, is Eddie Dennis. And it looks even madder when Eddie Dennis just does it because he just looks so thin and frail.
He's a weirdly strong guy. I mean, he'll do his Razor's Edge powerbomb to like Dave Mastiff. And it's like, you look like he's not an Atlas. He's not an Atlas contention, that's for sure. But no, I thought this match was really fun. It was pretty chaotic, especially we're starting to build on the multi-person matches at this point, but we're still early enough in the show where it's not too redundant. But the Riots hit their there's a human centipede of fingers. Yes. I wrote that down as a thing that happened. I'll just leave it there. I'm not going to provide any more context. So, district line by the Riots. Trent makes the save. Then you got some strike exchanges. And then both Trent and Pete put their fingers inside of Rob Lynch's eye. And Lynch hits him with a double spear to counter it. But then ultimately, we get a Trent 7 pile driver with a kick from Pete Dunne, which looked kind of cool, kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about it. But that is what hits Rob Lynch, and that is what gives British Strong Style the win, and we have new tag team champions. So again, a fun match, really chaotic match, but it got me going.
Yeah, I think that for the like the what's the word, the like zeitgeist of the time, it was the absolute right call to put the titles on them. They were hot as shit. People loved them. There were so many people wearing British Strong Style merch, even though they're heels. Obviously, it plays into the story of them losing. The fact that Rob Lynch only had one eye,
right? Yeah,
and it also played into the match as well because they couldn't really it's a bit weird because you would think, okay, so let's do a match where kind of what's his name? James Davis has to like do all the stuff and then tag in Rob when you can, which would have made sense. But they were like, fuck it, let's just have him be a badass and just make it a tornado tag, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So which actually kind of suits London Riots more rather than Lynch being like, no, I can't wrestle very much. He's like, he was the one that said basically wasn't he, at the start, like, you're out of luck if you think I'm gonna just step aside because I've got a bad eye. Like, we're fucking fighting, and that's what he did.
Yeah. That plays into their gimmick, like you said, this British APA.
Yeah. And he had a bad eye, of course, but after this match, he must have had a bad neck because it seemed like he took about 5 tiger suplexes on his head in this match. I couldn't believe how many times he took it. I was like, you're lucky that it didn't break your neck on the first one. Stop doing it.
No, he's immune to it. He's convinced he's immune to it.
I also love the fact that obviously this is one of the first times that Seven and Pete Dunne were tagging at this point. It wasn't too long ago that obviously they were rivals. And Pete Dunne is still the sadistic Pete Dunne. He was the guy that when Lynch said, I can fight, he just thumbed him in the eye straight away. Right. Like, okay, let's go. And Trent is still learning to be a heel, I guess, at this point. So he's kind of copying Pete, but not like it comes across like it's not really in him. He's just kind of like going along with it. He's being led along by this guy that he's like being like twisted by in like some way. And because he still does the like silly stuff, he still does the 2 chops and then chop the post like he always does, and then sells it like a funny old man.
There were a lot of chops to the ring post in this match as well. Broken necks, broken hands everywhere.
Yeah, but it was really cool because the match kind of played out like that. Like Pete was doing all the sadistic stuff, and Trent was kind of wrestling like Trent always wrestles. Right. But then it was him that brought the cricket bat into the ring and jammed it into his eye that led to the finish. So it's almost like this match was there to kind of not only get the titles, but also to show like, okay, Trent really is a prick as well.
Yeah, because I mean, my introduction to Trent 7 was, Mustache Mountain, the happy-go-lucky guy, twirling the towel with Tyler Bate. So it's interesting to see him in this heel persona, which to your point, he's kind of the same guy. He just happens to be a dick. Which he's good at it. So, no knock on him. But in the cricket bat, so cricket bats. So the London Riots have, or at least, early days of progress, that was like their calling card. Is that a London Riots thing, or is it just any person in Europe using it? Because we got to make sure that people at home know that we're British. Yeah, so it's just for them, but it's quite funny because they come across as these like hoodlums from like a council like housing place, like somewhere that's not very well affluent. Like that's kind of their vibe. Like they're like working class fighters. And cricket is the complete opposite of that. Cricket is like the gentleman's game that rich people play in villages. Are you questioning their cricket abilities?
So it's quite funny that they use a cricket bat. I'm not entirely sure what they would use. Maybe like some kind of, well, if it was South London, probably a knife.
There we go. Just murder the guy. Nobody ever seems to think about that. Well,
but then that's character stealing from what's his name? Oh, Jimmy.
A knife.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was about to say we've had him try to decapitate a man with a big axe. It's hard to kind of build on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, fun stuff there. New champs. And I know Pete and Trent are focal points going forward in progress, so it's interesting to kind of see them in their early stages here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the last part of the first half of the show. We move on, or maybe it's this next match. So we got, like you said, the impromptu match, quote unquote. Paul Robinson. So Paul Robinson comes out, which he hasn't been around in progress for a while, but he comes back. Yeah. Crowd still hates him. More middle fingers, but this time it's towards the wrestler. People do not like this Dobby looking fellow. And he's coming out here. He's yelling at Jim Smallman. He's pissed because he's a Progress original. How are you not going to book me on the card? I'm not leaving until I have a match. So it's basically an open challenge scenario. And then Chuck Mambo comes out, which you mentioned because they had like the beach balls, which is just saying, people not familiar with Chuck Mambo. He's like what would you call him? Like a 420 fucking
he's kind
surfer.
Of imagine Matt Riddle, but from the West Country of England, and he looks a bit like a young MGK.
You paint a picture. So I don't know. Do you think this was maybe kind of a letdown? Because you have Paul Robinson here. He's saying open challenge, anybody. So people are probably expecting Johnny Smith or Haystacks Calhoun or some other British. Well, that's not who's the big British guy. Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Giant Haystacks. Yeah. But they get Chuck Mambo. How'd you feel about Chuck Mambo being the guy to answer the challenge?
At the time, it was just fun because you got to throw around beach balls and they came all the way to the back, baby.
A lot of beach balls.
But yeah, like to your point though, in terms of was it a disappointment? I think everyone, when they heard Open Challenge Brixton, not everyone, but like certainly amongst us, people were like Havoc, because the last match that Havoc had was against Robinson, and of course they've got a lot of history.
Oh, of course, that would have made sense. Yeah.
So maybe that's why it was not a disappointment, because bloody love Chuck Mambo. He's amazing.
Or just like a debut of some sort, or someone that you haven't seen in progress.
And they were doing a bit of a switcheroo to be like, we're going to bring him down to bring him up when he comes out later, right?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. But so do you think this was an impromptu match? Probably not, right? I
don't think it was. I think it was planned. And I think it was a work. I think everything's a work.
It did. This is very random. Like, because Paul Robinson hasn't been around in a while at this point. Yeah. Chuck Mambo's like whatever. Yeah. So it just feels like a weird. Like when you look at the card, it's like, why is this here? But
for the purpose of what they were going for, clearly they were going to this is to build up Paul, and you didn't want someone to come in fresh and new necessarily and have to do what Mambo had to do, which was essentially get snotted on, spat on, stomped stomped into the mat, and then pinned after like 4 minutes. Like that's not a spot to give someone new, or like
dude. Robbo, man, he translates his character into his in-ring style so well. Yeah. I mean, the raggedy jeans, because me and you were talking like the early days of Progress, because Paul Robinson used to be just an athlete. I'm wearing tights. I'm doing kickboxing. I'm a high flyer, wrestling. And like, I was a big fan of him. I was like, oh, this guy's so athletic. He's so fun to watch in the ring. And then he transforms into this skinhead, just creepy looking dude. Just very like brutal. Like nothing he does is pretty. But like kind of is. You can like kind of see little glimpses of the kickboxing, like the form in his kicks, but he just chooses to make it look really stiff and ugly. like the curb stomps, like the curb stomp with his knee, the kicks in the corner. And like the loogie where he like makes it hang from his mouth and
Gross,
rubs
right?
it on his opponent's chin.
And you can kind of see at that point, like obviously Chuck Mambo's on his back, and he just has to let it happen. But he kind of looks towards the ref, like, really?
It's, I
This
mean,
sucks.
from the handshake before the match. I mean, Paul spits in his hand and then shakes his hand. It's like, this is just, I do not like this, but
he actually comes across like he's feral, like in his actions, like his moveset, like it looks devastating, but it's like it's just scrappy, isn't it? It's not like
scrappy's the word, yeah.
It's not polished, but it looks great. Like a lot of like scrappiness looks a bit rubbish because it's wrestling work, but he manages to either just kick people and punch people really hard and get away with it, or he's brilliant at it.
He's almost he's like a Vader, which comparing Paul Robinson to Vader is kind of, maybe a stretch, but he's like a tiny Vader.
Yeah.
And it's just brutal.
Poor Chuck. And there was also a bit at the start here during his his promo where obviously people were just calling him a cunt and stuff. And he pointed out one particular person in the crowd and called her a fat, ugly whore.
Man.
Which is slightly nicer than on the last show in Tufnell Park last month. He turned heel after the first time in about 3 years. Oh. And he called our friend Brum, who's been on the Apron bump previously. He called him a fat hairy cunt.
Did Jimmy Havoc called you a freckle-faced cunt or something?
Yeah.
Man, it's probably a top 3 moment in your life, right?
It's a rite of passage.
I suppose so. Oh man. Well, so Paul Robinson wins eventually with a curb stomp. And to your point, guess we're just building this guy back up, which I mean, like we said, it's interesting because he's what, 5'9", maybe, 100 pounds, but he's just so menacing. Yeah, like you said, the feral scrappiness. It's like if he touches me, I'm going to get some sort of STD. Like, he's got that vibe about him. So I'm a big fan of it.
There was a guy at the end when he was walking out in a Carlito shirt, and if you follow Progress, you probably know this guy. He's always wearing a Carlito shirt.
It's the white wall,
yeah. And he gets right in his face at the end, and I was like, he's going to die. This guy is going to die. But luckily, Paul walks away because I wouldn't have done that.
Yes, I was watching this. So I was like, he can't just let him get in his face like that. He's got to give him a shove or something, trip him, tie his shoelaces together, something. He'll get his, I'm sure. But well, after that, we got something a little more crisp. We got a best 2 out of 3 falls match, the rubber match between Tommaso Ciampa and Zack Sabre Jr. Hoo-wee. So this was probably the match I was looking forward to the most coming into this. Probably match of the night. It's arguable. Because they had their first match at the Super Strong Style 16. I believe the first one. Yeah. Right? Correct. Where it was the first time they met. Might have even been Ciampa's first match in progress or his second match. Zach won that one in an incredible match, like a match so good that it prompted a 16-month series of matches. I say that it's only 3 matches, but then they had a tag team match at one of the previous chapters where they teamed together, but then Ciampa turned on them. So we got a good build to this match, a good video package before as well, kind of laying it out. Basically, Ciampa loves progress, but Zach, this is like his turf. So it's just, who's the better wrestler ultimately, which, simple story, but it was a good story. Also, Ciampa's, according to commentary, at least, his final independent wrestling match, which makes sense considering he is in NXT at this point. So, ZSJ always, he's a stalwart in this scene as well. So, I mean, you see this on paper, it's going to be good. But where do you think this one ranks among their other matches that they had?
I actually think this is the third best of them.
I thought the same thing. I was surprised. I mean, it was a good match, but I don't think it matched the other two.
Yeah, I think the fact that it was his last match before Independence may have played a part in that. I don't think that he was going to be doing necessarily some of the stuff he was doing in the other two matches because he's like,
right,
I don't want to get injured on a Progress show.
You know, it's interesting, like bringing it back to Ring of Honor and another parallel because I'm early 2000s, and there was a match between Samoa Joe and Paul London, and this was Paul London's last match before he went to WWE. And I remember having very high expectations for that match, but it ended up being like kind of lackluster, like very simple, very kind of nothing crazy happening.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense, right? It makes sense.
Exactly. Like, why am I going to break my neck before I go to the tippity top of the industry? Like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that being said, it was a good match. Not trying to shit on it or anything, but it was. I'll tell you one thing that I don't know if I necessarily liked was the double pin.
Yeah. So I had mixed feelings on this because, you can only really judge a booking call by the audience reaction, right? Really.
Yeah.
And that audience did not like that. Like the boos were like as loud as it was for Gibson and Robbo.
Right.
And that's not what you want from a match like this, right? But I also think that it's quite a clever finish because the story they're telling is that they're both as good as each other, and that they're so well matched that a double pin kind of makes great sense. But it is a bit of a cheap finish, I guess.
Yeah, because it effectively makes it a one fall match, pretty much.
Yeah, people want to see the to and throw of a they want to see two pinfalls, and they didn't actually get to see two pinfalls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, because I think the story played out well. They both got pinned, so there was this sudden jolt of urgency that led to a pretty fast-paced ending stretch of this match.
Yeah, that was a definite kind of closing of Act 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, but if you're going into this expecting a 2 out of 3 falls match, I understand being kind of oh, now you took that away from us, pretty much.
Yeah.
But because there's other layers to it they can build off of. One guy wins a fall, and the other guy's to fight. But it's just another avenue they took to kind of come to this finish. So I didn't like it when I first saw it, but
yeah, I was the same because you kind of Pavlovianly oh, everyone's booing, so I don't like it. But when you actually think about it, it's actually a good idea. I just don't think it paid off because the crowd didn't like it. But it actually plays into the thing that Paul Robinson said when he was on the mic, and he was like, the more that you boo me, the less time that you get to watch your precious Zack Sabre Jr.
It is, although it is kind of a good sign that the crowd is booing because they get less wrestling. It's not that shows how much they enjoy the two guys that are in the ring. It's now we don't get to watch them as long.
Yeah.
But
you're right though, in that it culminated the kind of feeling each other out process part of the match, and it went a bit overdrive for the last 10 minutes, didn't it?
Right. And so we get there. So now it's 1-1. So next fall wins. And it's once the referee makes his decision, both guys are on opposite sides of the ring. They both realize where they're at, and then they charge each other. Now we're done with the feeling out process, like you said. No more chain wrestling. No more, working the arm, which Zach was doing a lot. I mean, these brutal torques he was doing, all the classic ZSJ stuff.
Yeah, that is something that I did put in my notes of post 1-1 when the match got frantic. The brilliant kind of selling that Ciampa was doing for his arm, he just completely forgot about it. It was
adrenaline, man. It's a hell of a drug. It's
when the match was slow paced and aimed at his arm, it's easier to be oh yeah, I've got a bad arm. Wink, wink.
Right.
But when you're having to do power moves and stuff, and he was just fuck it.
Yeah, he's still throwing out his Project Ciampa, which is the power bomb onto the double
amazing
knees.
Off the second turnbuckle. That looked. I think it was Glenn Joseph that his commentary was just he broke him.
I don't know how that move doesn't just kill both people involved,
Yeah.
both the knees of Ciampa and whoever
Yeah.
he's giving it to, especially off the second rope. I mean,
And especially someone as like sinewy as Zach, like on like on like a rhino or someone who's got like a jacked back, you'd be like, okay, he can probably take it, but Zach
right.
don't have that.
No. But yeah, we get towards the end here. Ciampa, like you said, hits the pedigree, which got a huge reaction.
Yeah.
Super hilarious for a 2 count.
And also super hilarious having just watched WrestleMania 40 where he came out dressed as him.
Full circle. I need Ciampa to hit the pedigree on Triple H at some point. At some point. But they did a little thing where they doubled up on finishers, both of them. So Ciampa hit the pedigree for a 2 count, then followed right up with a running knee for a 2 count. And then Zach eventually fights back and hits a PK for a 2, and then another PK for a 2. So kind of reminiscent of the opening match where each guy hits their finishers for a 2 count. Then we get that second rope Project Ciampa. But then ultimately, Zach locks in the octopus armbar hold, which he calls the hurrah, another year. Surely this one will be better than the last. The inexorable march of progress will lead us all on to happiness. Is the name of this armbar, apparently.
Yeah. Which I think is a Napalm Death song, which is a death metal band from Birmingham, UK.
It's such a deep cut, but it's such a cunty thing to name your move. Whatever. Zach gets the win here, though. Brutal looking armbar stomp to the head. I mean, if you know Zach Sabre Jr., you know what he's doing. But fun finish. Eventually, the arm did kind of come into play after a brief hiatus. But Zach wins. Makes sense. You know, he's going to be, you know, sticking around, I think. Well, kind of. I know he's in Japan a lot at this point, but
yeah, it's actually kind of the last that we see of both of them full time, really.
Yeah, it was best because we're, you know, Zach and Osprey and Marty. I mean, they're all deep in the New Japan world at this point. So
yeah. So you asked earlier about did you feel like this was going to be the launching pad or the end or whatever? Like probably more towards the end because of just the amount of people that were leaving.
Yeah. But there will be people to fill that spot. I mean,
yeah.
Get into the Walter era.
Yeah,
just waiting for that, man. But yeah, so really good match. Ciampa gets a "You deserve it" chant, which everybody understands. He's going full time to WWE at this point, so that was a cool moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit that when I watched this, I watched it all in one, and after this match, yes. I was a bit like, I don't really need this next match. I kind of want to just skip this next match. Not because I don't like the competitors in it. I was just like, it was the first time that there was a bit of like genuine emotion and like feeling. And I just felt like I just had like plenty of my fill then at that point a little bit. And the match itself after like that we're going to talk about now, like it felt filler as well.
Yeah, and it should be said, by the way, this show, you know, on demand, it's 3 hours and 40 minutes, which is long for a Progress show.
Big time, yeah.
I'll say that because I also watched it all in one sitting. I feel like it was paced pretty well for the most part. I do agree, though, it's at this point where, because we got an 8-man tag match. So it's another multi-person match. We're starting to get a little repetitive in some of the spots, and it's all starting to feel like one big blob of mites and bruvs and all that shit. So
yeah, and it was a lot of fun. It was fun, but
I mean, I'm never going to be mad about seeing the origin. So
well, you love that theme song.
Here I am. Oh, it's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. It's obnoxious. The origin here. So we got an 8-man tag. Dave Mastiff, El Ligero, Nathan Cruz, and Zach Gibson, of course, representing the origin. Taking on Damon Moser, Eddie Dennis, Mark Andrews, and Jack Gallagher, who is also making his last appearance before going to WWE full time. And they didn't mention this until commentary mentioned it like 5 minutes into this match, unless I missed it. If the origin loses, they must disband. So that's a little spit of stakes there. But ultimately, I would agree. It's definitely like, it's a lot of crowd brawling. it's a lot of fighting around the arena or whatever you call it. Utilizing the space, exploring the space. These guys did.
There was a balcony dive. Is that right? From Mandrews.
Yeah, Mark Andrews hit the moonsault. the lead singer of Junior. Well, I don't think he's the lead singer, but moonsault off the balcony, which is a cool little spot. It's funny, commentary couldn't see it, so they heard a big reaction. They're like, "Oh, something happened over there."
Yeah,
which is a hallmark of progress. I feel like
that
sounds awesome.
Yeah, that is the chant that we do, because we're in the corner, so we've got like 2 pillars that way and a wall that side. So there's only like a little screen that we can see through.
Right.
So if any of the action goes outside, it's a big old "that sounds awesome" chant from us.
Can't wait to catch it on demand. I mean, the highlight is probably the ring introductions, no?
Big time. The amount of toilet paper used for this, superb.
So much toilet paper. I mean, when was it COVID when there was like a shortage of toilet paper? I guess, right? If they only knew. They only knew.
Who was hoarding all of the toilet paper during COVID? Apparently it's Progress Wrestling.
But yeah, so the Origin, obviously they do their thing. Zach Gibson gets the mic, does his little spiel. People are not a fan of this Zachary Gibson. It doesn't seem like it.
Did you note down what what they asked Jim Smallman to say about Dave Mastiff?
I don't know. Why don't you remind me?
His introduction was, "He's big, he's bad. Ask your mum. He's probably your dad, Dave Mastiff."
I think that's better than the Bastard, personally. The Origin just amplifies like everybody. I feel like him and Ligero are guys that I've always I could take them or leave them, but as just shitty heels, they're just so hilarious.
Good. So funny.
It seems like Zach Gibson's almost like the odd man out, because he's like the one serious guy. Everyone's just taking the piss. Ligero's surfing on his. Well, he doesn't have the title anymore, but middle fingers.
You could argue that group elevated everyone apart from Gibson, really, but Gibson was the reason for the major heat for them. So,
right,
they needed him more than he needed them.
Yeah. So we got toilet paper getting thrown at the Origin to the point where the ring is more toilet paper than canvas by far. And I don't know how they got all of it out of there, but
there was a point where Ligero's doing Snow Angels in it.
yeah. Gotta do something, I guess. And the match gets underway. It immediately goes to the outside. Like I said, planches to the outside. Any spots in particular stick out to you other than the balcony spot?
The balcony spot, and of course the ending where Mastiff hits Gallagher with an actual car stereo. Perfect.
Love it. Down to their Liverpool roots. I guess it's seeping into all of them.
Yeah.
I did like the triple paradise lock, or the what they call it. I bloody love the graps me.
Yeah,
is what Jack Gallagher calls it, I guess.
Very good.
So it was Ligero, Nathan Cruz, and Gibson were all locked in this paradise lock, and then Mastiff makes the save, and he just gets in there, and they're all 3 like clamshells stuck in the fetal position. It's just a great visual. But it was a fun little match. It was a kind of a bit of filler, but it's also like, here's some, guys that have been a part of Progress for a while, mainstays. Yeah. Let's showcase them. Let's get an Origin match out there. Let's have some fun. Let's get the crowd involved. And nothing to. And the Origin eventually do win, like you said, with the car stereo. So they will not disband, thank goodness. And Jack Gallagher also gets a "You deserve it" chant. They all know he's going to WWE, and overall, I was fine with it. Nothing that I'll go back and watch years later, but it was fun. It was fun for what it was, I guess.
Yeah, if you're gonna like how people say, like, if you seek out one match, it would be, if you seek out one promo, make it Zach Gibson's.
So that brings us to the main event. Another multi-person match. Well, I guess every match is a multi-person. Two is multi, right? You can't just have a match with yourself. Well, I guess didn't Kota Ibushi have a match? That's the whole thing. So we got Progress titles on the line. We got the champion Marty Scurll defending against Tommy End and Mark Haskins in a triple threat match. So it's the backstory here. So both Haskins and Tommy End have had a couple shots at the title. Tommy's been screwed over time and time again against Marty. Mikey Whiplash got involved a couple of times. Mark Haskins has had a couple shots both against Marty and Will Ospreay when he was champion. He's come close to winning, but has not been successful. Then Mark, I think, won. Did he win the Thunder Bastard? Or no, it was just a match against Will Ospreay to become the number one contender. And then Tommy End fought his way in by beating Zach Gibson, I guess, as a way to make up for him getting screwed out of the previous title match. So that's how we're here. And this is when I was saying earlier about how the matches kind of started to feel like it was the same kind of stuff happening over and over again. And maybe that's on me for watching this in full in one sitting. But it was just like, I mean, the finish is awesome. That the finish, the way the show ends, amazing. But otherwise, I don't know. Do you think the fact that this is a triple threat match cheapens it a little bit?
I don't know, because I've seen triple threat matches that I absolutely love. So I don't necessarily think you can blame it on the fact it's a triple threat match. But but I'm with you in that this match to me was just a match and then an awesome moment followed by a really cool 2-minute period.
Yeah.
But I love the work that Marty Scurll does here. They gave him the big entrance for this with the 4 burlesque dancers dressed as him and then doing their dance, which until they started doing a dance which lasted what seemed like 5 minutes and went on way too long. It was pretty awkward at the end.
There's a bunch of people sitting on their hands watching you dance. That's got to be the worst feeling in the world.
But they obviously had a lot of time for Marty and respected him a lot, the bookers, and they gave him like a big entrance here and gave him a lot in this match. A lot of it was based around Marty. It was either Tommy End on the outside or Haskins on the outside and Marty wrestling them. Like it never really felt like it was End and Haskins going at it, which is a bit of a shame because that would be great. I don't think they've ever wrestled before. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that the match lived up to expectations, but people don't even remember the match. People just remember the moment and the finish. So that's all you need, really, right?
Yeah. And I hate to say it because I love Tommy End, but I think this would have been better if it was just straight up Marty versus Haskins.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think actually, was this Tommy End's last match for Progress? I'm not
sure. We got to be getting close, right?
Because I know that commentary mentioned all the talk this week has been about Tommy End, and I think potentially it was getting out there that he was getting signed. If it wasn't made official, there's clearly talk online about it. So yeah, I kind of feel like you're right. Mark Haskins' story here was a lot stronger than Tommy End's. Even the pre-match promo where Haskins is talking about his story of 13 years wrestling and he always falls short at the big match and he has to go home to his family and say he's failed again. That's such a better story than Tommy End's, who was like, why do I do what I do? Because I love it.
Cool. No, I had the same thought because it was a great package before the match, but then it just, like you said, it's very clear that Mark Haskins has the motivation is just way stronger. His story is just way stronger. And I went into this hope because I didn't know who was going to win this. Okay. I was like, I really hope Mark Haskins wins this. And but yeah, the match starts, like you said, it's a triple threat. They kind of pair off with Marty being the focal point. German suplex. There's a couple brutal Germans in this match to Marty. Marty had some brutal lariats too, knocking these guys on their head. Some power bombs, some fun spots here in the beginning of the match, but it just kind of felt like stuff happening at certain points. And then the umbrellas get in, so adding a bit of differentiation to this match. No umbrellas yet in this show.
Would you rather take an umbrella shot to the head or a chair to the head?
Let's see. Chair. I feel like there's no good way to take an umbrella shot.
Yeah, like those spokes.
Do you think they're working umbrellas though, or
Rigged.
they shoot umbrellas?
Yeah, this is true. This is true. There's some
It's
kind
like
of factory that Marty makes rigged umbrellas.
it's the same factory Jeff Jarrett gets his guitars,
Yes.
right? Or Jim Cornette's racket. But
Correct.
Yeah, so he throws like 12 of these umbrellas in the ring, which why do you need that many umbrellas? I don't know.
It's
I feel
England,
like they're
bro.
pretty durable. Yeah, it is very rainy. It's very rainy and gloomy there. You got a good point. They're probably not even his umbrellas. It was just the umbrellas that happened to be under the ring. So he hits Tommy Yen in the face with one, Mark Haskins in the face with one. Marty locks in the sharpshooter on Haskins, which is Haskins' move. Tommy Yen hits a kick on Marty, then goes to the outside and sets up a table on the outside, which whenever I see a British table, I'm like, oh boy.
There we go.
Hopefully this ends well.
It's either the most flimsy thing that you've ever seen, or it's made of metal.
Right? There's no in between. But Haskins eventually gets double suplexed off the apron through the table. So it ended as well as it could have, I guess.
Which Haskins sold for about 6 minutes, I think.
Oh, he was dead. I was convinced we would see no more of Haskins ever. But in the race, so this leaves, like we said, Tommy End and Marty Skrull, the two guys standing. Marty locks in the chicken wing on Tommy End, but Tommy gets to the ropes. And then Marty hits him with a couple of umbrella shots and then a tombstone, like a Gotch style tombstone.
Yeah, that was
for
cool.
a 2 count. So he gets a 2 count, and then obviously this is the ref's fault. So he takes an umbrella and hits the ref in the ribs with it.
Yeah.
It's another tombstone on Tommy. It's another 2 count. Another ref comes in, another 2 count. Hits this ref again. Hits another pile driver, this time a regular Gotch style pile driver. Paz comes out, the third and final referee, I guess.
Yeah.
It's another 2 count. So Paz gets clocked with an umbrella. So at some point, we got to start realizing the patterns here, guys. I mean, the guys in stripes need to learn, like, hey, maybe I just get out of the ring after I make a 2 count or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
also, a little note on the referees. The first ref was Chris Roberts, who everyone hates because he's rubbish.
Right.
and when when Marty hit him with the umbrella, everyone just cheered.
All because his voice squeaked at like chapter 2 or something, and now nobody ever let it go.
And the third ref, Paz, ran in like Charles Robinson at WrestleMania. It was great.
he Billy Gunn slid in that ring. I mean, he was ready to count. So all the referees are dead, and then security starts storming the ring because they're like, okay, I think maybe at this point we maybe try to do something about this.
Yeah. That was quite fun for me as well, because similar to like the NXT security, where you're like, oh, there's Von Wagner, like,
right?
It was just full of like young then progress guys that are now like veterans on the scene.
was Spike Trevay out there?
No Spike. Did have Connor Mills was there, David Francisco, for the people that know those guys.
Hello. Shout out them. So security, they all get laid out though. I mean, it's just a pile of bodies at this point. Pile of just dead bodies in polos. And out. And then you hear that very famous AFI music.
Previous to that, of course, there was the...
Oh, yes.
They were very clever, because the previous time that we saw Havoc, he was getting picked up off the ground by Jim Smallman.
Right.
Having terrorized him for 2 years. Seemingly putting a line under that feud, and he comes out and saves him.
Yeah, so Jim Smallman, so all the security's laid out, the refs are laid out. Smallman's in the ring. Marty's eyeing him down. Smallman wants no part of this. He's just there to ring announce and run the show. It appears that Skrull is about to attack Jim Smallman, which is only Only time that's happened was when Jimmy Havoc attacked him at chapter 10 or 9 or whatever it was. Then out comes Jimmy Havoc. You hear the music. Jimmy Havoc comes out. He's been gone since like, it's probably been at least a year at this point. Close to it, at least. I think he had like a knee injury or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think he fucked his leg up on one of those crazy. What are those like in like a farm in America somewhere where they're like, oh, let's prod each other with cattle rods.
I don't like how you're making it out like that's all we do over here.
What's the name of the promotion that does that? The King of the Deathmatch stuff.
Oh, it's not CZW, is it?
Might be. It's like, yeah. So like he won the Tournament of Death the previous year and went back out there to do just like a regular match. Tried to do a pile driver off the apron and did his ACL, I think.
Oh shit. Well, he's apparently fine now because he's come back out and comes to the ring. Huge pop from the crowd. I mean, he's built up so much stock with the Progress audience. I mean, he pretty much.
Did you know a big part that was happening? Was that
not. No.
Surprise for you? Did you?
Yeah, it was.
Did you get the big like? Did it feel big?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Because I mean, I know Jimmy Havoc. I knew he would come back at some point.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of when, and it seemed like Marty was going to be a good foil for Havoc to go against on his return because, like you said, last we saw Jimmy Havoc, he lost a brutal street fight to Paul Robinson.
Yeah, brutal.
And where he was definitely on the babyface side, and like you mentioned, Jim Smallman, when Havoc lost the match, Smallman helped him up, kind of putting a bow on that, like, okay, you're kind of a cunt, but I respect you, kind of thing. And the crowd kind of had the similar kind of feeling, and that was the last we saw of him. So when he came out, it's like, oh shit, now we're gonna get this new side of Havoc. It's not really a new side; it's kind of just a more respected side of him, I guess.
Yeah, he's now a cunt that beats up other cunts, so it's okay.
Right, he's our cunt. Marty is not our cunt, but they had a little face off in the ring. Havoc and Skrull do, which is a really cool moment. Two of the biggest heels in Progress history at this point. Get a little acid rainmaker from Jimmy Havoc, lays out Marty, and Havoc grabs the belt, looks at it, and then throws it to Smallman, right?
Yeah.
I think. It's at this point where I was like, oh, are they going to do a fucking no contest on this match? Like, is this the ending? I was like, because I was excited at first. I was like, but is this just like,
that's
what we're doing?
That's a Vince Russo finish.
Right. Yeah. But luckily, Haskins, like we said, he's dead on the outside. He's not coming back, but he does. So Havoc hits the Rainmaker on Marty. He leaves. Tommy N takes this opportunity to hit a suicide dive on a Mark Haskins, throws him in. A lot of urgency here. Goes to the top rope, goes for the double stomp, misses, and I think Marty hits him with an umbrella at that point, right? There's a ton of shit happening here towards the end. Ultimately, Tommy gets knocked to the outside, and Haskins fights back, locks in that rolling sharpshooter, and Marty Skrull taps out. New Progress champion, Mark Haskins. I was super psyched to see this. I didn't know if he had ever won the Progress title. Because occasionally, I mean, I've seen, certain like renders online of people holding the title. So I know a few people that are champion in the future, but I've never seen him with the title. So it was a cool moment. Mark, we talked about it. He's a guy that I've become a big fan of watching this.
Yeah. Boy, had he earned it, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, he's like very similar to like a, I don't want to compare him to Chris Benoit, but similar in the sense that he like kind of just got over on his work. Just very well respected and got his crowning moment eventually. So it just felt like a feel good moment. Like he was the guy, like we said, he had the best story going into this, and he had come so close so many times in the past couple of years, and just the way he just organically got over with the crowd is something that I've never seen before. So not to this extent, at least.
You're a huge fan of him when we've been speaking. So it's cool that you got to see him get his big win.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Kyle,
so
just 2 seconds. I'm just going to go get my phone because Dom and James had some stories from the show that they wanted to share with you. So I'm just going to get my phone so I can read them to you.
Please, yes.
Yeah, so it was a great show for us to go to and everything. And then afterwards, we went to there was an official Progress after party.
Oh yeah.
So not all the wrestlers, but a lot of the wrestlers were at the pub. We could just go and talk to them. We ended up playing pool with Eddie Dennis and Mark Andrews. Nice. I was able to talk to Havoc for quite a while, and he was saying how he was just shocked by the reaction. Wasn't entirely sure what the reaction was going to be. He knew that he wanted to be a babyface, having obviously gone through the storyline that we've spoken with, and he was just I'm so happy that it paid off. So that was cool. And then some other fun stories was James, who I don't think you've had on. Oh no, James did a Ring of Honor for you, right? Ring of Honor. He told me that that he did Brixton was one of his first shows for Progress, and he thought that someone wearing a Chuck Mambo shirt was just a big fan of Chuck Palumbo. And he assumed that Chuck Palumbo was on the roster. So
when I saw Chuck Mambo for the first time, my first thought was he looks like the guy that played Owen Hart when they did the parody. You know what I'm talking about? The Nation of Domination parody.
Jason Sensation.
Why do you know his name off it? Whatever. Continue.
I don't go outside. And Dom told me that it was Dom's second show, and he's told me that he took his then girlfriend at the time, who was so taken with Marty Scurll on her first ever wrestling show. At this show, at the next show, she got him to sign her tits.
Oh, look at that!
Which is a lovely story. So thanks for sharing that, Dom.
Did he sign his tits? I mean, I would whip one out for him. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. He probably won't be my first pick, but yeah, no, that's awesome. The after party, I'm sure it's probably that's probably what you went for, right? This was the pre-show.
Yeah.
For the real main event.
It was at a pub in Brixton called the Dog Star, which is a cool pub anyway. So it was fun. It was good.
Hell yeah, great way.
But also, I think the after party culture of British wrestling was part to play with its downfall.
I can't imagine why. Oh boy. Well, we got a few more years until the bubble pops, like you said. But yeah, man, just a fun show to watch. If nothing else, the atmosphere. Up to this point, by far the biggest show they've ever done. A cool moment at the end, and not much more to say than that. It was just a fun show. Happy for Progress that they got this moment, and I guess they have shows that are bigger or at least comparable after this.
Yes, they've got at least three shows at Alexandra Palace, 3 weekends, so 9 shows in all. And then the big show at Wembley Arena, which is where they held the NXT takeover.
Right. Interesting.
Which I believe is still the biggest independent show in England ever.
Really?
I think I got 6,000 odd people.
Oh, I mean, I think All In is probably the biggest indie show, but I digress.
That show is headlined by Tyler Bate against Gunter, and also has Ilya Dragunov against Pete Dunne. So yeah,
might be an okay bit of graps, I would say.
But yeah, strap in because I think that one's 4 hours 40.
Oh, I'm strapped in. I'm strapped on. But yeah, having a lot of fun with it. But speaking of fun, speaking of wrestling, speaking of wrestling should be fun. Once again, Ross, thank you for coming on, watching some wrestling, coming on, talking about it. Where can everybody find you and the beautiful boys at Wrestling Should Be Fun?
Yep, wrestling should be fun. We are at WSBFUN on Twitter and everywhere else, all other platforms. We are wrestling should be fun because Twitter don't let us have many letters and words, so we had to go shorter.
Yeah.
So if you want to follow our like live wrestling fun, then head to our Instagram. That's the best place for that because Dom does a great job of doing our live action from shows, which includes Progress, Rev Pro, Riot Cabaret, Eve Wrestling sometimes, and we'll be going to Progress on Sunday, which is going to be a lot of fun because it's got Paul Robinson versus Homicide. Now that is a match I want to see.
What the fuck? That's like one of the Booker bingo matches. Like, how do we fucking figure this one out? That's so funny. I hope there's gonna be some cricket bats in that one.
Yeah,
I would hope, right?
For sure.
If Homicide knows how to work a cricket bat, which
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know if I get called a freckle face cunt again.
And if you're not, just let me know and I'll call you one. All right, I think it's a good bookend. Freckle face cunt is the best way to end up episode, I think.
Absolutely.
Once again, thank you to Rossi Boy for returning to the show. Always a good old time with Ross. Go check out Wrestling Should Be Fun on social media, wherever you listen to podcasts. All of that she is neat. And all of this is in the description. Can you fuck off? My cat is trying to get in my coffee. I don't know what you're fucking playing. Get your asshole off my coffee. All right, I think this is about the time where we end the episode. Appreciate the support, appreciate the love, appreciate the kisses and the little tickles on the side of my tummy. Appreciate all that stuff. Anyways, I'm out of here. Love you all. Big smooches. Mwah. I'm hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.